what's up? I'm Channel Pup, fanboy supervillain, and welcome to my review of Sonic the Hedgehog 3, the movie, not the game, which releases this Friday. I'm going to be giving my extensive thoughts on this movie, while also avoiding spoilers, so don't worry, you won't be spoiled on any major plot details, but if you are wanting to go into this one completely blind, maybe just go see for yourself first. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you love Sonic the Hedgehog, this is the place to be, and if you want to support me further, the link to my Patreon page is in the description below. All support, hugely appreciated. Thank you very much. So first of all, huge thank you to Paramount Pictures for inviting me to see this movie and attend the premiere on December 10th. I had a whale of a time. It was fun chatting with the interviewers. Walking the blue carpet was just incredible. The entertainment was terrific. Dave Sharpart's live paintings of Sonic and Shadow were terrific. It was fun to sit down and play the arcade games and Sonic X Shadow Generations. The canapes and cocktails were delicious. It was just a damn good time. So okay, with that all said and done, how is Sonic the Hedgehog 3? Does it stack up to the other two films? Does it stack up to the hype? Does it make up for the Knuckles TV series? So first of all, this video is not going to be necessarily as structured or well edited as one of my retrospective episodes. Partly for just lack of footage, what with the movie not being out yet. Give it a little time though, and I will do a retrospective episode on Sonic 3. But those retrospectives are for when these projects have really found their place in the pop culture echelon, if you will. We're talking about something that's not only current, it's not even really out yet. At the time of recording, anyway. Even though I am now technically, by definition, a corporate stooge, I will be putting this under the same scrutiny that I would if I wasn't invited to the premiere. As I'm recording this, the film has had some time to sit with me, so I'm going to be going thoroughly through all the stuff I liked in the movie, the stuff I disliked, well, the stuff I thought could be tightened up a little. Alright, so in terms of the story, what you have here is very much a remix of Sonic Adventure 2 in a similar way to how the Sonic 2 movie was a remix of Sonic 3 and Knuckles the game. It is the same overall storyline to Sonic Adventure 2, with Shadow and Dr. Robotnik teaming up to activate the Eclipse Cannon, and it's up to Sonic and the gang to stop them. But it's in certain specific details where you will see the changes. Adapting Sonic Adventure 2 was such a good move for these movies, as its story is kind of just perfect for the cinema. That game always had such a blockbuster kind of Independence Day vibe to it, but it also had this kind of foreboding, haunting atmosphere to it. There's a good chunk of reasons as to why that game is so iconic and beloved, and the question is, how does Sonic 3's interpretation of that story stack up? Does it do it justice? Does it do Shadow justice? Which is something that I know everybody wants to know. Maybe don't expect this to be one-to-one with Sonic Adventure 2. There's definitely been some changes here. The cast is a little smaller than it was in that original game, and we're kind of pairing that story up with this coming-of-age arc that we've been doing for Sonic for the previous two movies, which does have an impact on Sonic and Shadow's kind of dichotomy, but that is accounted for. Also, rather than the divide-and-conquer approach that Sonic Adventure 2 took with its protagonists, with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles this time, it's the trio's adventure. They're all in it together for the majority of the runtime, meaning that each of the three characters does get a chance to shine. And given that the trio are fully established from the jump, this time it really does feel like it's the trio's movie. Knuckles and Tails are in a lot of ways just as much the main character as Sonic is this time, and we really get to see how these boys work together in all the action. If you felt Tails was underutilized in Sonic 2, then I think you'll be pleased with how much action he gets in this one. If you're a huge Knuckles fan but the series kinda lets you down, Knuckles gets lots to do in this movie. Obviously, there's bits of Knuckles lore that the movies haven't tapped into yet, but that does result in a net positive for this movie because it means that he can be in on the action this time, rather than just guarding the Master Emerald or searching for pieces for it. So I am quite happy with this direction for the time being. I do still hope that we will see a bit more Knuckles lore later on. We do spend a lot of time with Shadow too, of course. He's kind of the main attraction for this one, and we do explore his backstory extensively. But I will say, this is definitely a new interpretation of Shadow's backstory. Without giving anything away, it's quite a streamlined version of that backstory that fits well into the universe of the films. I'd describe the changes as tasteful. There are some areas of Shadow's past that are left mysterious, keeping the door open for more of his backstory to be explored later on. However, you're given everything that's relevant to the Sonic Adventure 2 story, while making some tweaks to it that make it just a bit more believable and a bit less convoluted. Naturally, I adore the OG Shadow story, but objectively speaking, this version is tightened up a bit. I was honestly surprised by some of the stuff that we did explore with Shadow's backstory though, and how much time we actually spent on it. If you love the Shadow and Maria stuff in Dark Beginnings, you're getting a lot more of that here. Keanu Reeves is also very good as Shadow. I wouldn't say anything like, wow, this is the best Shadow we've ever had, just as I wouldn't say that about Ben Schwartz's Sonic, simply because for Sonic and Shadow, I don't really have a favorite actor in the role. I love what all the different actors have brought to the table with those guys. That being said, if you played the Shadow Generations DLC and were worried about Keanu Reeves' performance, I wouldn't worry about it. He's a lot better in the movie than he was in the game, and I think there's probably a number of reasons for that, but we won't get into that. Big name stars phoning it in for video game tie-ins is nothing new. Alila Brown is great as this new take on Maria, and while I won't go into much detail about her, we are moving a little bit from some of the more tragic elements of the character. She's less that sort of little angel girl archetype, and we explore more of her hobbies this time. She's got a little bit of a rebellious streak this time, that she's kind of sneaking into labs and facilities that she has no business really entering just because she's incredibly curious. In terms of the character who gets the most screen time though, I'd probably say it's Dr. Robotnik. This is undeniably his film. This is where he completes his arc to becoming that fully realized Eggman character, and we're witnessing him kind of at the height of his power. But he also gets some great character development. The first two Sonic movies kind of always went with the angle of family, with Sonic being one of the Wachowskis and Tails and Knuckles kind of folding into that. We explore how having Gerald present changes Ivo, how they reconnect and catch up on lost time. We see how Gerald has influenced Ivo, but we also see where the two differ as well. Gerald coming into the fray also affects Ivo's relationship with Agent Stone as well. While a lot of this does still play into Jim Carrey's comedic chops, there is quite a dark angle to Gerald's intentions for him and Ivo's future, and I think fans will be surprised by how kind of dark that gets. This movie is obviously taking a very different direction with Gerald Robotnik from what the games did. And if you are hoping for a Gerald Robotnik that is more akin to how the games did it, then you're gonna be a little disappointed by that. But I would say that this version of Gerald Robotnik, while very different, made for an incredibly entertaining secondary villain for this film that still does tap into some of the darker and more sympathetic aspects of the game's version of Gerald Robotnik. You'll get what I'm saying when you see it. Then as for Shadow, he also plays wonderfully into the theme of family, being someone who has, as far as he understands, lost his family. Shadow is kind of the person that Sonic could have become if Sonic didn't choose to be the person that he is. And those choices are very much at the forefront of this movie. There's this whole speech from Tom to Sonic all about the choices that we make when we are faced by things that Shadow is facing. Sonic, Tom, and Maddie all share a set of ideals, and we see what those ideals mean to other characters in this story. What those ideals mean to Shadow, what those ideals mean to Dr. Robotnik. We do kind of blur the lines between the good and the bad this time, but we also see how Sonic could still become someone like Shadow even now if someone poses a threat to the ones that he loves. This creates a strong sense of empathy between these two opposing forces of Sonic and Shadow, and leads to a really intriguing character dynamic between the two. But like how I mentioned that this film kind of blurs the lines between good and bad, much like the original Sonic Adventure 2 story did, a very fun part of this film is the alliance between Team Sonic and Dr. Robotnik. And I'll say this, the circumstances that caused this in the film are a lot better than they were presented in the trailer. But I think one of my favorite aspects of this team-up is the dynamic between Tails and Agent Stone. How there's kind of a mutual respect between the two, despite aligning with opposing sides. In fact, it's also just cool to see Agent Stone interacting with Team Sonic, as, outside of Knuckles, we've never really seen him interact with them. Now, I noticed that I am leading with talking about character dynamics, and that was the same with Sonic 1 and 2. This movie shines when it comes to those character relationships. You've got the yin and yang of Sonic and Shadow, the blurring of the lines between good and bad allegiances. That core of Sonic Adventure 2 is absolutely still intact despite the changes. But what surprised me is that this film, despite its more comedic tone than the game it's based on, did manage to retain that foreboding and haunting quality to it, particularly in the third act. The comedy is something that I've criticized in the previous two. I've appreciated that there's at least been in-universe reasoning and justification to reference just about every other popular IP under the sun, but it still came across to me as fairly insecure, like these movies were desperately trying to associate themselves with other popular movies. I also haven't been a fan of the fart jokes or the jokes that are just overly labored, which is why I am pleased to say that in the comedy department, this movie is toned down fairly significantly. You've still got humor in there, that's just part of these films' DNA. And you do have that Detective Pikachu joke that was shown in the trailers, so there is still reference humor there, just less of it. But I didn't clock any fart jokes this time, only a couple of movie references. So, you might be wondering, With the more comedic inclinations of the Sonic movies, did they make Shadow funny? Does he get any funnies? And the answer is not really. He gets like one gag line and a couple of one-liners, and that's it really. They've been very faithful to Shadow. I'd say he's probably the second most faithfully adapted Sonic movie character, just behind Tails, because Tails is basically one-to-one. The majority of the humor this time just came from the Robotniks, and just kind of letting two Jim Carreys do their thing. And as I mentioned, this is a very Robotnik-centric movie. We've let go of the Olive Garden jokes now, it's less juvenile. Jeff Fowler did give a speech before our screening where he did mention that he wanted these movies to kind of mature with their audience, and that definitely comes across. This one is less juvenile in the humor department. The human characters are also probably handled at their best here. I was kind of concerned when they released this laundry list of different actors who would be in this movie earlier this year, and then seeing that Rachel and Randall were getting character posters again. But honestly, when I saw their inclusion in this movie, I laughed. It felt like a little in-joke more than anything else. Tom and Maddie are obviously still present, although they really do just serve as parental figures for Sonic. They don't really get their own subplot this time, and they kind of make a joke about how little they get to do in this movie. You have your devoted human scene, like the point where the humans get their chance to shine, but it's in a scene where Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles are still present this time, so they're not just benched for the entirety of that. There's not that point where I'm like, when are we gonna get back to the Sonic characters like what we had with, say, Sonic 2 and the wedding scene. And it also ties directly into Sonic's story this time, so it feels diegetic rather than feeling very random like it did in Sonic 2. So again, that is something that has been tightened up. So we've covered comedy, we've covered human characters' subplots. You might be wondering at this point, is there anything I didn't like about the movie? Do I have any criticisms? Well, I think Kristen Ritter was wasted in this film. If you know, you know, but the question was just like, why get Kristen Ritter for this role when there's another role she'd be terrific for in this movie? You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I was waiting for a big reveal when it came to Kristen Ritter, and it just didn't happen, and I was just like, that would have made so much sense. That would have been actually really good. And I don't even mean it in a fan servicey way. You could have fit this character that I'm talking about into the movie, and Kristen Ritter would have been ideal for it. You could have even had Kristen Ritter's character in this movie turn out to be the character that I am referring to, and the movie actually offers a compelling explanation as to how that could be the case. Sadly though, that isn't the case. My other criticism is that I do think the pacing is a little uneven. Though I will say, it does have the best pacing of the trilogy. It's incredibly fast-paced though, and it wastes no time getting straight into the action, but then you've got some jokes from the Robotnik that can go on just a teeny bit longer than I think they really need to. So pacing-wise, it's definitely better than the other two. There's no jokes that outstay their welcome quite on the level of, say, the Knuckles series, nor are there any scenes where I'm just like, damn, we've been better off without that, but it could still just use a teeny weeny bit of tightening up here and there. I did mention that the movie wastes no time getting into the action though, and I can see why, because holy hell there is a lot of it. Particularly in that back half of the movie. The action is absolutely off the charts in this one. Some incredibly memorable action sequences and set pieces that in some ways go a lot bigger than the game it's based on. While the story is generally a bit more intimate and personal than Sonic Adventure 2, they took some opportunities to go bigger. Don't expect to see Prison Island blow up and rockets coming out of the pyramids or a gun truck chasing Sonic down San Francisco, but holy hell do we get something incredible in its place. I don't want to give it away, but that third act is an absolute feast of pure action and spectacle on a level that humbles the previous two entries and lives more up to the kind of over-the-top anime-esque action that we've come to expect from recent Sega entries. This thing reaches near Man of Steel levels of visceral superpower violence, and I absolutely live for it. Especially when that is backed up by such good character work that these movies really do excel at. Now, as we kinda head for the end of this review, you are probably wondering, the music. Because in my recent retrospective episodes, I've made quite a point of saying how these films really missed the mark in terms of the musical potential of a Sonic the Hedgehog film score. Now, Tom Holkenborg does return once again for this film's score, and it's definitely better this time. It's still mostly orchestral film stuff, but if you're hoping for a bit more of the game's music to creep its way into the film, there is a handful of moments where I did squeal in excitement at hearing a motif from the games adapted here, with some really surprising inclusions. It's still not exactly the thing that I'd like for Sonic. I'd love to hear something more similar to Daniel Pemberton's Spider-Verse scores, or just something generally more rock-inclined, but it's definitely better than it was before. And I know you're all wondering if they play that song in the movie, and okay, yeah, Run It by Jelly Roll is played in the movie. There you go, there's your answer. So, I loved this movie. I really did. Is it the best of the three? Absolutely. Does it stack up as a Sonic Adventure 2 adaptation? I'd say so. Does it do Shadow justice? Yes. They did a really great job with Shadow. Is it perfect? No. Is it exactly the thing that I want from a Sonic movie? No, but again, that is very subjective. If you asked me, I would still want a Spider-Verse style animated Sonic movie with very much a hip-hop New Jack style soundtrack. Humans in it, but more in the background like, say, Sonic Unleashed. But again, I didn't go into this movie expecting the Sonic film that I'm dreaming of. And I think even though this film delivers on a lot of things that the fans have wanted to see for a long time, still go into it with an open mind. Because there are going to be some contextual differences here and there. I'll put it this way. If you don't like the Sonic movies as they currently are, you still probably won't be blown away by this one. It's still a live-action Sonic movie, complete with its human OC characters, grounded Earthworld, and lack of abstract environments. It still has a fairly comedic inclination, Sonic is still a bit more goober-coded than his game counterpart, and if you have issues with that, then this movie will maybe change that just a little as we explore some new sides to Sonic, but not by much. I'd say that this took the overall model that the Sonic movies laid out and tightened it up to a point where it's probably damn near the best Sonic movie that you could make in live action. If you love Sonic Adventure 2, you will probably love this movie. If you love Shadow, then you'll probably love this movie. If you've loved any of the other Sonic movies, then this one will likely be your favorite of the three. I loved Sonic 2, but I'd say that this is head and shoulders above that film. Everything that worked about the other films is mostly here. The key strengths of this movie are primarily in their characters, their arcs, and their themes, as was the case with the other films, but it is ramped up here. We're exploring that a lot more now. Also, not going to give anything away, but during the credits, keep your butt in the seat. For the entirety of the credits too, because they really want you to be excited for Sonic 4. And holy hell I am, but even just in of itself, the mid-credits has a lot to show you. I do have some skepticism for the future of this iteration of Sonic and the longevity of that, but at the same time, this movie has made it clear that these movies are quite bravely tapping into some ideas that the games can't do. And I think that's a really exciting opportunity that I'd like to see them make the most of. This film did some things that I never expected to see from a high-profile Sonic release, let alone one of these movies. There is so much to talk about when we get to talking spoilers. But for now, just know, I adored this movie. I'll say with complete conviction that this was an exceptional action blockbuster that Sonic fans are going to love, and the whole family will enjoy too. I really mean when I say that this is something special. That wraps up this spoiler-free review. What do you guys think of the movie if you did get the chance to see it? Comment below, discuss, and as always, if you've enjoyed this video and you want to support more like it, be sure to hit subscribe, hit the like button, and in the description below is the link to my Patreon page, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get your name in the credits of these videos, watch ad-free, download to watch anywhere, and a special shout-out goes to the patrons in the $5 and above tier. We have Silver, Josh Strider, Big Mom, Grant Allen, Twilord, Coco210, Hey It's Classy, Jay Sevian, Ian, Chohenshin, KB, RT0, Carl-X, Hypes, Sad Goku, Dare Denny, SSS06, Kale Bennett, add metal pipe sound to scare viewer. Not gonna do that, Kale Bennett. Ken K, Mr. SP, Sirius the Skeptic, Biotin. Did you know this entire video was AI generated? It wasn't. And Vera Wild. Thank you, good folks, so much for your generosity, and to all of you at home, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Now get out of here.